The quiet man on the bench. It was a cold afternoon in downtown Los Angeles. The sky was soft gray, like a worn blanket pulled over a tired city. People hurried past the park, heads down, coats wrapped tight. No one noticed the man sitting alone. On the wooden bench near the old fountain, he wore a black jacket, simple jeans, and scuffed boots. His beard was short but rough, and his eyes held stories. His name was Keanu Reeves. He sat still, not like someone waiting, but like someone remembering. Pigeons fluttered at his feet, and children laughed in the distance. He didn't move, not until a stranger dropped to the ground. Nearby, the man's name was Tommy. His coat was torn. His hands were shaken, and his face showed days without sleep. He had nowhere to go. He had no one left. He wasn't supposed to stop in that park. He wasn't supposed to fall to his knees. He had been walking for hours, trying to forget the eviction notice in his pocket and the last phone call from his sister, who told him she couldn't help anymore. He just wanted to disappear. When he collapsed, no one stopped. People kept walking. One woman looked over, but turned away just as quickly. A teenager laughed with his friends and didn't even notice. Except one person did. Keanu stood up quietly. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He just walked over, bent down, and placed a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You okay?" he asked softly. Tommy didn't answer. His eyes were red, his lips dry. He was too tired to pretend anymore. Keanu sat down beside him on the ground. In the middle of the cold cement, with people watching, judging, and ignoring, a famous man sat. Next to someone everyone else had already forgotten. No cameras, no lights, no fame. Just a quiet moment. After a while, Tommy spoke. His voice was broken, but the words came through. "I used to have a job. I used to have a home. I was doing everything. Right, then it all fell apart." Keanu nodded. He didn't offer advice, didn't tell him to stay strong or keep going, just listened. "People say it gets better," Tommy whispered. "But what if it doesn't?" Keanu looked at him, eyes full of honesty. "Then you stay anyway," he said. "You stay not because it's easy, but because something might still happen. One thing, one person, one moment that can change everything." They sat there a little longer. Then Keanu stood up again. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was an address. A small center nearby that helped people get back on their feet. "They helped a friend of mine," he said. "Go there. Ask for Maria. Tell her I sent you." Tommy took the paper, unsure what to say. Keanu reached into his pocket once more and handed him a gift card. "Now for a meal, a real one, not fast food. Why are you doing this?" He asked. Keanu smiled, but it was a sad smile, like someone who had once needed help and remembered what it felt like when no one gave it, because someone once sat beside me when I thought I was invisible. And then he walked away. No applause, no cameras, just the sound of quiet footsteps. But that moment stayed. Tommy sat on that bench for another hour, holding the paper like it was a key. The sky began to shift, the gray giving way to gold as the sun began to set. And maybe, just maybe, something inside him shifted too. The address on the paper. Tommy woke the next morning in the back corner of a bus station, curled up on the hard bench beneath a flickering light. His body ached. His stomach grumbled. The night had been long, cold, and full of shadows that whispered old regrets. But in his hand, still clenched tightly like it might disappear, was the small piece of paper. The address. He kept reading it again and again, almost not believing it was real. The name written below the address was Maria, and under that, one sentence: "Tell her I sent you." He remembered the voice, calm, gentle. The voice of a man who didn't have to care, but did anyway. Keanu Reeves. Tommy stood, his legs stiff and sore. He washed his face in the bathroom sink and used paper towels to wipe down his jacket. He looked in the mirror and saw someone he barely recognized, but he nodded to himself anyway. Maybe this was the start of something. He followed the address across the city, walking block after block through the morning rush. People passed him without a glance the way they always had. but something inside him felt different now. Not better, not fixed. It's just different. Like maybe, for the first time in a long time, he was walking toward something instead of just away. The building wasn't much to look at. It sat between a laundromat and an old bookstore. The sign above the door read, Hope Shelter Community Outreach Center. Below it, a small bell rang as he stepped inside. The warmth hit him first. Not just the heat from the old radiator, but something softer. There were couches, coffee, the scent of bread baking somewhere in the back. And people, real people, talking quietly, sitting with others. Listening without judging. A woman in her late 40s stood at a desk, sorting through forms. Tommy walked up slowly. "I'm looking for Maria," he said, his voice dry from silence. She looked up and smiled gently. "You found her," she said. How can I help?" He hesitated, then held out the paper. "Someone told me to come here," he said. "He said to give you this." She unfolded it and read the note. Her eyes softened immediately. "Ah," she said with a knowing smile. "Him? You know him?" Tommy asked. "Not well," Maria said, "but enough. He sends people here from time to time, never says much, just shows up, offers a hand, and disappears." Tommy nodded, unsure how to respond. "Come on," she said. "Let's talk." They sat at a table with 2 chipped mugs of warm tea. Tommy told her everything. Not all at once, but in pieces. About the job he lost when the company downsized. About his mother's hospital bills. About his sister's struggle to take care of her own family. About the nights he spent sleeping on sidewalks and in stairwells, always trying not to be seen. Maria didn't interrupt. She didn't tell him it would be okay or ask him why he didn't try harder. She just listened, the way Keanu had. When he finished, he looked down, ashamed of how much he had said. But Maria just said, "Thank you for telling me." That was the first thing that made Tommy feel like a person again. Over the next few days, Maria helped him get into a temporary shelter. It wasn't perfect, just a room with a cot and 3 other men, but it was clean, warm, and safe. Ouch. Gave him fresh clothes. She helped him sign up for job placement. She even found a therapist who came in twice a week. "He'll just talk with you," Maria said. "You don't have to explain everything. Just show up." Tommy wasn't sure he believed it would matter. But on Thursday morning, he went anyway. The therapist was a kind man named Elliot. Gray hair, soft voice, eyes that didn't look away. Tommy sat in a chair across from him and said nothing for the first 15 minutes. And Elliot waited, finally. Tommy asked, "What if I don't deserve a second chance?" Elliot's response was simple. "Then it's even more important that you get one." The word sat in Tommy's chest like warmth. Not fire, not lightning, just warmth. Days passed, then weeks. Slowly, the darkness started to shift. Tommy found a part-time job helping clean up at a construction site. The pay was low, but it was enough to buy lunch. Real lunch? He started sleeping better. Not every night, but some nights. He started smiling, just a little, at things he used to miss. But most of all, he started believing that maybe he could be okay again. And always in the back of his mind was the moment in the park, the quiet man in the black jacket. No speeches, no camera, just kindness. One day, Tommy asked Maria, "Do you think I'll ever see him again?" Maria smiled. "You never know." But maybe that moment wasn't about meeting him again. Maybe it was about becoming someone who'd do the same thing for someone else one day. Tommy thought about that, made his chest tighten, but not in a painful way. In a hopeful one. He folded the piece of paper again and tucked it into his wallet. Not because he needed the address anymore, but because he never wanted to forget the moment that changed everything. The ripple effect. A month passed. Then another. Tommy's world didn't transform overnight. There were still hard mornings when his body ached from work, still nights when he lay staring at the ceiling, afraid the progress would vanish in a blink. But something inside him had started to heal. He woke each day with a purpose, even if it was just sweeping floors or folding towels at the shelter. He walked taller, he smiled more. People began to recognize him not as the man sleeping near the bus stop, but as the guy who always held the door or asked if you needed help. And still, every time he passed the park where it all began, he paused. Sometimes he sat on the same bench where he had collapsed. He never saw Keanu again. That was okay, because the moment remained. One rainy afternoon, as Tommy left work, he passed a small corner store. Just outside the entrance, a young woman sat huddled beneath a thin blanket. Her hair was tangled, her shoes too small, her hands trembled, and her eyes were hollow with fear and exhaustion. Tommy stopped. His first instinct was to look away, just like so many had done with him. But then he remembered the hand on his shoulder, the calm voice, the warmth, so he sat down beside her, ignoring the wet sidewalk. "You okay?" he asked softly. The girl flinched. She looked about 19, maybe younger. I'm just waiting for someone," she said, voice barely more than a whisper. Tommy nodded. He didn't press. After a long silence, she added, "My mom kicked me out. Said she couldn't deal with me anymore. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Tommy's heart ached, not with pity, but with understanding. He stood and went into the store, came out with a sandwich, a bottle of water, and a cheap rain poncho. Handed them to her without saying much. The girl looked up at him, blinking hard. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Tommy smiled gently, "'Cause someone did the same for me." He gave her the address of the shelter. Told her about Maria. Told her to ask for help. She didn't promise she would, but she took the paper. Before he left, she said, "Thank you. I didn't think anyone would see me today." In that moment, Tommy realized something that hit him deep in the chest. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was changing lives. It didn't take much. Not money, not power, just kindness, patience, presence. And suddenly, everything Keanu had said that day in the park made sense. One thing, one person, one moment. A few days later, Tommy found himself at the shelter, helping fix a broken cabinet. Maria walked by and smiled. "Heard you sent someone our way," she said. Tommy looked up surprised. "Did she come?" Maria nodded. "She's scared, quiet, but she's here." That's the first step. He felt something shift again inside him. Not pride, something gentler. Peace. That evening, Tommy sat outside the shelter, watching the sky. The sunset painted soft orange light across the buildings. A small group of volunteers passed by, laughing together, holding bags of food. One of them waved to him. He waved back. Realizing he had become part of something bigger than himself, he wasn't a lost cause. He was part of the ripple. From a park bench to a shelter. To a stranger in the rain, kindness had moved like water. Soft, slow, and steady. And it was still moving. He still hadn't seen Keanu again. But sometimes when he sat on that bench, he imagined him walking by. If he ever did, Tommy knew what he would say. "Not thank you, but I get it now." Because real kindness doesn't just save someone. It teaches them to save someone else. The unexpected Couth days grew warmer as spring arrived. Flowers began to bloom in small corners of the city, and Tommy found himself smiling at things he used to ignore. Kids playing, dogs barking, even the sound of music drifting from passing. Cars felt softer now, more alive. He still worked hard every day. His job remained simple: cleaning, carrying, organizing, but it was honest work. And for the first time in years, he was able to save a little money. Not much, but enough to start dreaming. One Wednesday morning, as he helped Maria set up chairs in the community room, her phone rang. She answered, then paused. "Yes," she said, glancing at Tommy. "He's here." She held out the phone. "It's for you?" Tommy frowned. "For me?" Maria nodded. He took the phone carefully. "Hello," a calm, familiar voice replied. "Hey, it's Keanu." Tommy froze. He hadn't heard that voice since the park. He had imagined it, remembered it, but he never expected to hear it again. "How? Did you know where I was?" Tommy asked, his voice low. "Maria mentioned your name the last time I dropped off supplies," Keanu said. "I was glad to hear it." Tommy's heart thudded. "I didn't think you'd remember me." "I do," Keanu said simply. "You were sitting on a bench, but you stood up." Tommy didn't know what to say. Keanu continued, I've been working with a small project, helping fund community gardens and youth centers in the area. I need someone to help run one of the new spots, someone who understands what it means to start again. Tommy blinked. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance, Keanu said, like someone once offered me. Silence filled the space between them. Tommy's voice cracked. I don't know if I'm ready. Then it's the perfect time, Keanu said. I wasn't ready either. Tears filled Tommy's eyes, but he didn't wipe them. He let them fall. Not out of sadness, but because he finally understood how far he had come. They arranged to meet later that week at the new garden site. When the call ended, Tommy sat down, his hands trembling. Maria smiled. I told you, he remembers. That Friday, Tommy took a bus across town. When he stepped off, he saw a small lot filled with fresh soil, young plants, and kids helping. Adults build raised beds. A wooden sign read, Roots of Hope. Keanu stood near the fence wearing jeans and a hoodie. He waved when he saw Tommy. They shook hands. No cameras. It's just two people meeting again. Changed but still connected. Keanu gave him a tour, told him about the kids who would learn to grow food here, the families who would get fresh vegetables, the school down the street that planned to send students to volunteer. This place needs someone who cares, Keanu said. Someone who knows that growing something takes time. Tommy looked around and saw more than plants. He saw potential. Not just in the garden, but in himself. He agreed to take the job, not because he felt perfect, but because he wanted to be. Part of something that gave back. The next few weeks were a blur of work. He learned how to manage the space, organize volunteers, and even host events. Children laughed as they planted seeds. Parents brought old tools and shared gardening tips. And Tommy stood in the middle of it all, feeling more at home than he ever had. One afternoon, as he cleaned up after a long day, a boy approached him. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old. He held a small cup with a tiny sprout in it. Named it after you, the boy said. Tommy knelt. You did? Yeah, the boy said proudly. Because you help things grow. And in that simple moment, Tommy's heart overflowed. This was more than a job. This was purpose. He thought back to that cold bench, to the darkness, the hopelessness. And then he looked at the light around him now. One man, one moment. Of kindness, it had changed everything. And now it was his turn to pass it on. Full circle summer brought longer days and brighter skies. The garden bloomed with colors: deep green lettuce, bright yellow squash, and tiny red tomatoes clinging to vines. Laughter echoed through the space almost every day now. Kids ran. Barefoot between rows, elders told stories under the shade of the old maple, and Tommy became the heart of it all. He had grown into his role like the garden itself, slowly, quietly, but with strength. He wasn't just the man who swept the floors anymore. He was the one people came to for advice, for comfort, for kindness, and still, every evening, he stayed a little late, watering the plants as the sun dipped low. He liked those quiet moments when the world softened and the wind whispered through the leaves. Sometimes he imagined Keanu sitting nearby again, nodding in quiet approval. One evening, Maria stopped by with coffee. You've built something special here, she said. Tommy shrugged. I just followed your lead. No, she said. You made this yours. They sat on a bench near the fence, watching the last of the children leave. You ever think about what would have happened if he hadn't stopped that day? Maria asked gently. Tommy nodded. All the time. And now, she said, you're doing the same thing for others. He looked at her, eyes full of quiet wonder. I'm just trying to repay it. Maria shook her head with a soft smile. Not repaying it, you're multiplying it. A few days later, the local news sent a reporter to visit the garden. They'd heard about the impact it had made in the neighborhood, how crime had gone down. How families now had access to fresh food. How kids came home talking about compost and teamwork instead of violence. The reporter interviewed Tommy near the sunflowers. How did this all start? She asked. He hesitated and smiled. A stranger sat down next to me when I thought no one ever would, he said. And he told me one moment could change everything. The story went online later. That week, it spread quietly at first, then faster. Soon, comments poured in, people touched by the journey, inspired by the transformation, moved by the simplicity of kindness. And then something unexpected happened. An invitation arrived. Keanu was being honored at a private event, a small ceremony, celebrating individuals who had created change not with power, but with compassion. And he had asked if Tommy could attend as his guest. Tommy felt overwhelmed. Not because of the cameras or the fancy room, but because someone had remembered him not just as a story, but as a person. When the day arrived, Tommy wore his best shirt, still a little wrinkled but clean. Maria smiled as she handed him the invite. Go be seen, she said. You deserve it. The event took place in a quiet hall lit by soft lights. The crowd was full of people in suits and dresses, talking in low voices. Tommy felt out of place until he saw him. Keanu. He hadn't changed. Same calm presence, same quiet smile. He crossed the room and embraced Tommy like an old friend. You look good, Keanu said. So do you, Tommy replied. Thank you for that day. Keanu shook his head. I just did what someone once did for me. You're the one who carried it forward. They sat together through the ceremony. When Keanu was called up, he stood before the crowd and spoke. In his gentle way, we live in a world that moves too fast, he said. Sometimes we forget that the smallest act of kindness can grow into something much bigger. I didn't change Tommy's life. I just showed up. He's the one who kept going. And now he's showing up for others. The crowd applauded. Tommy sat there, heart full, eyes damp. Realizing that this wasn't the end of his journey, it was the beginning of something even greater. Later that night, as they stood outside under the stars, Keanu turned to him. What's next? He asked. Tommy looked up at the sky, then back at him. I want to start another garden in another neighborhood, somewhere it's needed. Keanu smiled. Then let's make it happen. Just like that, another seed was planted. The garden beyond the city months passed. The seasons shifted again. Fall crept in, painting trees in deep orange and quiet gold. Leaves drifted across sidewalks, and warm jackets returned. But something new was blooming this time, not just in soil, but across hearts and places that had long been forgotten. Tommy's second garden opened on the south side of the city. It wasn't much at first, just an empty lot. Cracked pavement and a broken chain-link fence. But he saw beyond that. He saw what it could be. He gathered volunteers, people who had once sat in the dark, like he had. Some had slept on the streets, some had lost jobs, families, hope. But all of them showed up, tools in hand, hearts open. They named the place Second Chance Soil. Each week more people joined. Teachers, students, single mothers, old men who remembered planting with their grandfathers. The garden became more than just a place for food. It became a sanctuary, a place where pain could be spoken without shame, and laughter could rise even when the days were hard. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Tommy walked the rows, checking each plant. He paused by a patch of carrots, kneeling to touch the soft dirt. A small girl approached, holding a drawing. This is for you, she said. He unfolded the paper. It showed a big green garden and people smiling, and in the corner, a man holding a watering can. You made this? He asked. She nodded. My mom said you helped us when we had nothing. Tommy smiled and swallowed the lump in his throat. He remembered how it felt to be the one needing help, how it felt to be invisible. And now, here he was seen, trusted, loved. Keanu came to visit the new garden a few weeks later. He didn't make a big entrance. He never did. Just walked in, hands in his pockets, nodding at people, listening, watching. Tommy met him near the back gate. It's beautiful, Keanu said, looking around. It's theirs. Tommy replied. I just helped it grow. They walked together down the path. You changed everything, you know, Tommy said after a long silence. Keanu looked at him. No, he said gently.
Oh,
You were always going to rise. I just sat next to you for a moment. They reached the end of the garden where a new wooden bench had been placed under a tree. Tommy motioned to it. Thought you might like this spot. They sat together, just like that first day. But this time, everything was different. The city around them was loud and fast, but in the garden, time slowed. Voices drifted in the wind. Hope hung thick in the air. Tommy turned to Keanu. Do you think we can keep doing this? He asked. Keep building. Keep helping. Keanu nodded. As long as we remember the moment is never too small. And in that moment, the weight of the past felt lighter. Not erased, but transformed. The man who had once collapsed from exhaustion now stood tall, guiding others. The actor who had once been a stranger became a silent thread in something bigger. Not a movie, not a headline, but a legacy of quiet kindness, eh? Movement of hearts, passing light from one soul to the next. Not with fame, not with fortune, but with a hand on the shoulder. With one moment. And that moment, it never truly ends.